Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to explain the scoring for Aidan that you'll see on the key that I created. I had started and intended to do this recording live and on the fly using the digital recording system over here, but I couldn't keep up and be able to put all of the characters that I needed to. It's much easier to score a running record, or much quicker, I should say, to score a running record by hand than it is to do it digitally. So instead, what I did was stopped and started the video so that I could create this key based on what I heard in Aidan's performance, and I wanted to just spend some time going through it for a couple of reasons. One, so you can see my interpretation of his reading and how I have coded things and how I expect you all to be coding things that are sometimes ambiguous. We'll take a look at a few things that came up that were ambiguous for Aidan, and that can help you as you're coding Chris, your focus student. And then the other reason is that I wanted to share with you how to fill out the record form for this class. I have modified the record form from what you will see in the running record text that you purchased for this class. And if you open up that text to the very back in the appendix, it has a blank record form, and you'll see that everything looks pretty similar, except I added these sections here, the middle section that is for the text leveling system, and I also added the fluency rate area there. So I'm going to walk you through how I would score Aidan. And this is how I had my screen set up so that I could capture his performance here in the video, and then beneath it I have the text that he was reading, and I have it so that I can see the text at the same time as freehand coding over here on the right. So I used this text on this side to compare over here to what I was recording on the right hand side. And this method seemed to work really well for me, so I suggest if you're trying to code digitally like I've done, you have the luxury of stop-start in this class. You wouldn't have that luxury if you were in the field for your field placement, unless you recorded. So try to code it freehand, maybe on a piece of paper as Aidan is reading, and then you can record it digitally if you like to use the digital record form. So generally what I do is listen, and I'll explain my coding.
Survey. Aidan, I have a book I'd like for you to read. It's called I Can Read.
I can read to my mom.
So first line, sorry, I stopped it a little early. First line, we hear him say, I can read to my mum. So he inserts a word that is not in the text. So that should be coded like this, with an insertion. There's no line drawn or word under it because it's a completely new word that we don't see in the original text. You can see the original text over here does not have that word. So it's coded as an insertion. And you know, if you're looking at the coding at a glance sheet that shows you how to code for Fountas and Pinnell, insertions are always counted as errors. In the next module, you'll start your analysis work by adding up the errors and the self-corrects in these columns. So I'm not going to go too far into that right now, but this would be his first error on this. Okay, let's continue.
I can read to Dad. I can read to Nana.
So 2 pages lapsed and he didn't make any mistakes. I can read to Dad. I can read to Nana. And so now we're on page 5.
I can read to my sister.
So here he says, I can read to my sister. Notice I do not do a self-correction here. Actually, I should. This should be a self-correction. I need to fix that because he isn't attempting to sound out the word. He's actually made a mistake. So this should be actually a self-correct. So I'm going to fix that in the moment. That should be a self-correct. And the reason it's coded as a self-correction rather than an error is because if he had started to sound out my, he would have gotten a check mark up here because any attempt at sounding out the word is considered part of reading that word correctly. So when we hear a student sounding words out, if he were to say my sister, he would have gotten a check here for just a correct word read. We would still note that he's done a sound out, but then on the right hand side of the line we would put a check mark. The reason this is marked as an SC is because he started to sound out in a completely nonsensical way for this word. Now, my guess is he was following the pattern of the text. I can read to mom. I can read to dad. I can read to Nana. I can read to my sister. He caught himself there, but still, it's not an attempt at sounding out that word. So we're going to mark it as a complete self-correction here. So he started to make an error and then self-corrected. So that's how you would code that there. And then he said sister and got that word correct. Let's continue.
I can read to myself.
So he just read the last page in the book. You can see it's got the last page. And he said, I can read to myself. There were 2 additional lines in this text, and Darnell did not notice that when he went to page turn, he had clumped a page together with the next one and skipped 6 and 7. What she should have done is stopped him, corrected, and said, oh, you skipped a page, go back. But she didn't notice. So we're not going to count that against him. And because that was not a mistake in his reading, it was really a mistake in his concepts of print or in his fine motor skills, or you could argue in a number of different things that happen there. But essentially he grabbed an extra page, and that doesn't count as a reading mistake. So what I've done here is said pages 6 and 7 were accidentally skipped. No error is made here, and word count is modified down. So what you have to do for the total words is count up how many were in the story and then subtract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then that makes a new total score for this reading. Let's continue. Oh wait, that was the last sentence. And so he correctly read, I can read to myself. So what I want to show you right now, that's generally how I would score this running record. And what I want to show you now is how I would calculate the fluency rate. I'm only going to do words correct per minute because that's what you have information for. Well, we can look at words per minute. We can look at words correct too. So the total number of words gets noted first. You have to count the words. They're not noted for you on this text. And if you count them, you'll get 38. But don't forget, he skipped 2 pages, so we have to take away those skipped. So minus 12 skipped. So you get 26 words total were read. So next thing we have to do, this is just a placeholder or name holder here. So next we have to figure out his words per minute. And if you go back to the featured assessment slides, you'll find the equation for that. Actually, I think it's in the Module 9 fluency slides. You'll find the equation for that. And it's simply the total number of words read. So he read 26 total, times 60 seconds in a minute, every time 60 seconds, divide that number by the total time it took him to read. So down here is where you should note the time that it took the student to read. And because we're using videos this semester, you can note that by time started and timestamp the video for when it started. He started reading when the video was at 1:08, and then time ended. He just finished, and you can see it's at 1:27. And then you just do some subtraction. Remember that you're subtracting in time. So if it's going over into the next minute, you can't just take away, you have to do it by 60. And there are time calculators online that can help you with that if that's tricky for you. But the elapsed time in his reading is 19 seconds. He read that text so fast. There was only 26 words that he read, so that's pretty it's pretty understandable why it only took him 19 seconds. So words per minute will be the 26 words he read times 60, divide that by the 19 total seconds it took him to read, and you get 82 words per minute. That is the number that tells you how many words, if he were to have read for 60 whole seconds, he likely would have read 82 words. Now, to figure out his words correct per minute, all you do is take away the number of mistakes he made. And something really important when you're doing a running record to know is that you don't count self-corrections as mistakes. And you don't count attempts to sound out a word that eventually are a check mark correct as mistakes. And the at-a-glance scoring sheet will tell you if the mistake that the student made counts as an error or not, and how many errors. So this one's pretty simple. In this 26 words that he read, he inserted one word here to make a mistake, to make an error. So the error count for this, you will see in your next module, will be a 1. He doesn't get an error for this because he self-corrected it. So that one goes in the self-correct column here. I don't know why it's making me put it way up here, but I can move it. So you move that down to the self-correct column. Again, this will be in the next module, but I just wanted to show you how you would calculate the words correct per minute, and you need to know the number of errors that the reader makes. So since he only made 1, you multiply that by 60, divide that by the 19 seconds total duration, and you get 79. And that score, that 79 words correct per minute, is what you use to compare to the norm score from Hasbrook and Tyndall. So he read 79 words correct per minute. He is in first grade. It is the middle of the year. 79 words correct per minute puts him somewhere around like maybe the 85th percentile. You don't have to be exact here. You can estimate. He's above 60 and below 97, above 59 and below 97. I'm going to say roughly at the 80th percentile. That's a really good place to be. So we see a strength here for Aidan in his fluency rate. So that's how you can use his rate using the timed reading and using the Hasbrook and Tyndall norms by grade level for oral reading fluency to figure out if his reading rate was appropriate for grade 1. And it was. It not only was it appropriate, it was advanced. So that's how I would score this first running record. You can see I've also gone in and filled in some other important information that you have access to. You know from the top of this text that this is a level A text, so you can fill that in. The leveling system used, Fountas and Pinnell, all of these can be Fountas and Pinnell. The typical grade range, the typical text range for students at this grade level, remember that that is found by looking at the RAS chart, which can be found here. And so we're looking at the Fountas and Pinnell program. So typically in grade 1, students are reading levels D through J. So I noted D through J. That's typical of a first grader. You can see, make sure you're looking at the Fountas and Pinnell. So typically first graders are reading D through J, and he read a double A. Now, he did blow through it and did really well. So clearly this text was easy for him. Without even doing the calculations that you'll do in the analysis module 10, we can already assume that this text was pretty easy for him. Notice that I did make a comment here underneath directional movement. That's where you note how the student was able to handle the book. So I wrote, he read from left to right, he read from top to bottom, he did skip 2 pages on the turn. So I would want to make sure that I correct him the next time that happens and maybe give him some advice, perhaps some page turner assistive technology, like putting paper clips on the bottom of the page to help him realize that he's got to feel individual pages when he's turning and not just grab clumps of pages. The analysis for errors and self-corrections, that will be done in the next module, as well as cross-checking information. So that's all you can fill out at the end of this module on coding. Okay, so next text is, scrolling down, Time for Dinner, which is a Fountas and Pinnell level A. You might be wondering, where does the title get written on the record form? The title goes in one of these boxes, which is determined after you figure out the student's accuracy rate, which is part of the analysis work you'll do in module 10. So that's why we're not writing the titles down. But this is a level A. So double A was the easiest. We went up a level to just regular A. We're still in Fountas and Pinnell, and he's still at this point reading a text that's below a typical first grade level. So let's see how he does. So this text is Time for Dinner, and it follows a really consistent pattern.
Beautiful reading. Thank you, Aidan. We have another one I'd like for you to read. It's called Time for Dinner.
Meow meow, here we come. Woof woof, here we come.
Notice accurate reading.
Baba, here we come.
Page 8.
Onk onk, here we come.
On to page 10.
Moo moo, here we come.
12.
Quack quack, here we come. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, here we come.
Okay. So he says, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle, and he kind of whispers. Aidan does this. When he's not confident in his reading, he whispers off the end of the word. But we can assume he was probably finishing cock-a-doodle-doo again. The words were cluck, cluck, and it was pictures of, I think, chickens. And so he was likely looking at the pictures when he read the word. He didn't know the word cluck cluck immediately, and so using picture clues, he said something that still made sense with the story, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo. Either way, they were wrong, and every time he reads a word incorrectly, it is marked as an individual error according to Fountas and Pinnell. So these would be 2 separate errors, which is why they got coded that way. So 1 for this word, 1 for this word. So he missed 2 there. Let's see how he finishes out.
Here we come.
And off they go for a barbecue dinner here.
Okay, so he finishes strong. So he's only missed 2 words there. Going back up to the top, the timestamp for this reading, he started at 1:36 and he ended, I stopped it a little after Darnell had finished talking, he ended at 2:06 roughly. So he read for about 30 seconds, this reading, maybe 30, maybe 29, depending on how you captured it. So The total words read for this is a pretty easy one to count up because there's a pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So each one is 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and then 36, 37, 38. So there are 38 words total in this text. This time he does read all of the words, so we don't have to do any subtracting up here for the total words read. So to figure out his fluency rate, we take those 38 words times 60 seconds always for 1 minute. We divide that by his total duration of time reading, 30 seconds, and we get 76. This time we know for a fact that he's made 2 errors. So I can go ahead and insert here in this row that he's made 2 errors on page 14. And actually I'm going to do it like this, so that we're ready for the next thing you do in module 10. So there are his 2 errors that he's made. And so we can do the words correct per minute because it would be that total number of words minus the 2 errors that he made. So instead of 38, we're looking at 36 times 60 seconds divided by his total duration, which is 30 seconds, and we get 72. And so then 72 words per minute on this text, he's still reading way above where he should be. The norm for this time of year is 29. He is a quick and accurate reader at this reading level. So with a level A text like this, he is able to read, I would say, again, he's up at, 80th, 85th percentile. He's pretty high up there. So well above where he needs to be this time of year with a level A text. Okay, let's continue. The last text that Aidan's going to read is a level B Fountas and Pinnell text. So we know that first grade reads D through J, so he's still reading a below grade level text at a level B. And all of that information is recorded here. This time he's going to read a book called Tiger, Tiger. And here you'll see he makes some more mistakes that will give you some practice.
And one more. This is called Tiger, Tiger. Isn't he a mean
Clearly
tiger?
excited about this
Tiger
text.
is sleeping.
Okay, so he makes a mistake on the first page that will affect his reading for the rest of the text. He said, Tiger is sleeping, and this is how you code a substitution. So you write the word that appeared in the text. We can see it here. Tiger is asleep. Draw a line and write what the student substituted above that word. So this is his first error in this text, and these substitutions always count as errors. So I'm going to make a note of that here. And you'll see, because he does that on the first page and doesn't self-correct and is not corrected by Darnell, because it's a running record is not a teachable moment. You don't correct students as they're reading. He continues to make that same mistake, which does impact his score on this reading. Let's keep listening.
Mother monkey is sleeping. Baby monkey is sleeping. Baby monkey wakes up.
Good reading on page 6.
Here he comes. Here, baby monkey comes.
Okay, so I did this down here on the bottom of the page because, first of all, he does that thing when he's not confident in his reading where he kind of whisper trails up and you can't really tell what he says. And also he says a bunch of things and I couldn't really capture all of them, so I wrote it down. The text on page 7 says, here comes baby monkey. And he says, he, like he's saying the word he, and then he self-corrects and says here. And remember, the text says, here comes baby monkey. And he said, here he comes. So he says he, and then gets the check mark because we assume that he's sounding that first word out when he says here. And he does this a lot. We see that pattern as he continues his reading. He will start to say the word and will often either self-correct what he said or finish reading. So he's a bit of a sounder outer when he's reading. He decodes as he goes. So here, he gets the check mark for here, and then he says, he comes. So I think maybe he gets hung up on that he that he started with, and he thinks that there needs to be the word here, he in this sentence. So that's actually going to get coded as an insertion right here. So he's inserting the word here. So it's he, here, he, and then he skips right over baby monkey and says the last word in the sentence, which is comes. So he got he, here, check mark, he, insertion, skips right over baby monkey. And in fact, we need to have a couple of dashes here for those omissions, right? He omits baby monkey. And then we see him finish the sentence comes. Then he goes all the way back to the word here, just the corrected version, and he says, because he knows he missed baby monkey, he's got to go back and stick it back in there because he missed it, and he knows those words. So he says here on the repetition, which is up here. That was the best way that I could note it on my digital copy. Baby monkey, and then he gets that word comes again. So he repeats the whole phrase. This time he corrects himself and puts in baby monkey where it belongs. So I'm also going to give him the self-correct. So it's a bit confusing when it's all boiled down. The mistake that he makes that counts is the insertion of he. Now he does insert baby monkey, or he reads them. This is where your interpretation can come in. You could have scored this in a whole different way. What is evident, no matter how you score it, is that he gets the word here, baby monkey, and comes. He has all of the words, but he's also got an extra word. So it's that he insertion that gets counted here at this moment. So he has inserted a word here. Okay, so let's continue his reading. I'm happy to talk about this, how you all would have scored him after your training as we meet in class. So page 9.
Baby monkey is hungry.
Good reading.
Tiger wakes up.
So he went, here, tiger wakes up. So this is going to be a self-correct because the word was tiger wakes up, and he started with, which is not consistent with how that word starts. Then he was starting to sound out tiger. Then he said here again. He still hung up on that word here, and they self-corrected all of those attempts by saying tiger. So it's a lot of attempts we can see ultimately self-corrected. So those don't count as errors against him.
Here comes. Tiger is hungry.
On the very next line on page 11, the text says, tiger is hungry. He's still hung up on that early pattern in the text of here comes baby monkey here. It's actually not a pattern because it's only once, but he made a mistake on that line, so it must be lingering with him. For tiger is hungry, he says, here comes, and he knows that he said that incorrectly. He inserted those two words and he self-corrects and says tiger is hungry. So I've coded them each as an insertion. He inserted here comes. There's nothing above them because it was blank text when he said those words. There's nothing in the text that matches up with them. He says here come and then self-corrects and says tiger is hungry. Next page will be page 13.
Mother monkey wakes up.
Did you hear it? He said, babe, mother monkey wakes up. So he started to read baby monkey, probably because it's the very next line in the text. It says baby monkey. He knows those words. And he also knows that mother monkey is not the same as baby monkey. So he starts to read it self-corrects. That does not count as an error because he fixed it.
Baby monkey, come up here, come up here.
Nice fluent reading there.
Here comes Tiger. Baby monkey is up in the tree. Baby monkey is safe.
Oh.
So notice how when I'm coding on a page, I am following the way that the text is set up. So when I look back at my running record, I don't get confused and see going across the row. Like I could have just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 checks going across the row on page 16. But that would be confusing when I go back to analyze what he's read. So the TypeScript over here matches up with how the text on the page is displayed. And my running record coding should also match up with that. And page 16 is a great example. So this text says, baby monkey is up in the tree. Baby monkey is safe. I just want to stop for a second and talk about his fluent reading here when he reads page 13. He reads, babe, mother monkey wakes up. And then he says, baby monkey, come up here, come up here. And he says it with that sense of urgency, which is how a fluent reader would read it. And then, did you notice on page 15 where he read, here comes Tiger, he said, here comes Tiger, which is how we would say that if we wanted to sort of build suspense or make the listener feel how that tiger coming should feel in the story. That's a suspenseful moment, but don't worry, baby monkey is safe. So he does really nice fluent reading in this text, but we can see he does make a repeated mistake that is going to impact his score overall. So the total words read for this text, if you were to count them up, you would get 55 words. The elapsed time, he started at 2:16 and he ended at 3:10, 3:11 if you go by the clock right now. And this is one of those examples. You can't just take 3:10 away from 2:16 because it's time. So I actually suggest that you count up. So go from 2:16, and if you were to go an entire minute, you would get to 3:16. But you got to take away 6, and that's how I landed on 54. So 54 total seconds elapsed. So he read 55 words total, and he read times 60, always 60, divide that by his elapsed time of 54 seconds, and you get 61 words per minute. Then you've got to go through and take away his errors. And you'll get the 3. I think it's a little bit different right now because I changed this. I made this a self-correct. So this should be 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get out my calculator. I'll show you how I do this. So he made 4 errors. Let me scan down quickly and make sure there's no other errors that would count against him. He self-corrected, self-corrected, self-corrected. He's got a lot of good self-correcting going on. We're counting this here. So he's got 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So he's got total words of 55. Take away the 4 errors, and we get 51. So this should be 51. Times 60 seconds, you get a big number, divide that by his total elapsed time, and you get 50, we always round up, 57, sorry, what am I doing? This is wrong. 57 words correct per minute. So 57 correct words per minute is close to the 75th percentile. So notice as the text level increases, the students' correct words per minute is decreasing. And that makes sense. The more challenging a text is for us to read, the slower we will be at reading it. And we saw him pause and read a bit more deliberately throughout this text. So that words per minute of 57 here makes good sense for Aidan in this reading. The last thing that you need to do, which I have not done yet and I will do so you can check in on the table, is fill out the table that I've been keeping for Aidan's literacy progress. So you will go back into your planning page, and down here under running records, you'll put in simply what you've observed at this time, these two columns. You won't be able to fill this in until we're all done. So anything that you have collected in your data at this point, you can put in the descriptor columns here. Okay, so now it's your turn to take a stab at Chris's reading, but if you would like to do another practice, you can practice coding with Jenny here.